Welcome back here to Gamers Without Borders. We've completed our 4 Korea series for the day, and now we're moving over to the world bracket, the entire world, apart from South Korea. Joining me to talk about the next matches that are coming up, a change of the guard. We've got ZG and Rotty here to talk about this. We've got a few moments before we actually get into things, though. So, ZG, did you watch the games? Did you enjoy the games? Of course, Hero looked great. What a surprise, wow.
I love the ending of the games. Post analysis, you know, it was spot on.
It was.
No, I was watching the games, of course. So, if you want to talk about the games, well, Hero versus DRG. That went as expected. I actually don't think there were any surprises in the Korean side of things. So. Yeah, I guess this one.
There you go. There you go. Roddy clearly also enjoyed the post-game analysis as well. Good job, guys. Yeah. All right. Let's focus on the EPT bracket. We throw Ben more under the bus as we've got ourselves 4 best of 3s here. Let's take a look at those here as we have later on Clem versus Lambo, Showtime versus Australia, Lazar going up against Special as well, and Oliveira and Cham is going to be the first one that we start off with. So let's go over that for a moment here. Roddy, Clem, Lambo, all of these guys. It's looking like a good bracket for the people that have, you know, come in from the previous bracket, and as well as the ones that have come in from this.
You kind of lost me there, James, but it does look like a good bracket if you really love StarCraft 2. I think these are 8 amazing players. I think Cham is kind of the overwhelming underdog, and yeah, you're tempted to say that Oliveira should be the overdog, as Katz likes to put it. I like it when he uses that word, but I honestly don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Oliveira at all, but I do think he gets rather fortunate with the first match he plays. Clem, on the other hand, is probably not too upset. Lambo's got to be fuming a little, right? Last weekend he plays against Oliveira and Spirit. It doesn't quite go his way, and now he plays against the one guy that even Lambo in the past has been quite vocal about it, right? Like, I don't like playing Clem because I feel that if he plays his best, then there is actually nothing I can do. So I don't think that Lambo is very happy with his opening match. No,
absolutely. Not exactly easy. And then on the other side of it here, ZG, the Protoss are going to have to go up against either Showtime and Australia. So we've seen no shortage of great PvPs from these guys in the past, but Protoss can't catch a break either.
Yeah, they're going to knock each other out. I mean, guaranteed Protoss in the qualifying match, and I was glad to see a couple of Protoss making it through the Korean side of the bracket. But yeah, I don't know which one is you know, I don't know if both of them can make it through, but I do think Showtime is going to be the favored one, particularly up against Australia. However, Australia is really quite clever and very odd. So sometimes their styles do create some sparks, you know, the aggressive kind of weirder player versus the very standard macro player that is Showtime.
All right, let's talk about our first match then here for the world bracket. We have got ourselves Oliveira going up against Cham. We've not made any kind of shortcomings of it or anything like that before. It's Oliveira, the world champion, not having the easiest time in the previous bracket here, Rotty, going up against Cham, who you would have to lean towards the world champion as the favorite here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, now every time that Oliveira plays, we all wonder, right? Does he still have it? Is he still that same guy as we saw in Poland? And honestly, the first few times we saw him after IEM Katowice, he looked pretty darn good. In the WTL playoffs, he was impressive. He still plays in an online tournament here and there. Sure, he got bobbed by Maru, but there really is no shame in that. And Maru clearly took it very personal. But it looked all quite fine until last weekend. Like, that just wasn't great. It started off well, 2-0 over Lambo, but then 0-3 Gabe, 0-3 Rainer, and I had some conversations with other pro gamers where they said, like, nah, he kind of played his normal level, and I thought that was even a bit too much, where I was like, okay, we can't always expect him to be IEM Katowice Oliveira. But I felt even before IEM Katowice, if you would have told me Oliveira or Time is gonna go 0-6 in those games, I'd be like, nah, I give him a little more credit than that, right? Like, we expect him to get some points on the board there, so it was a bit shocking, makes this weekend very interesting.
Yeah, definitely a bit of fluctuating results here and there. ZG, your thoughts coming into this match?
I have to echo what Roddy was saying. I feel like, you know, Oliveira, when he was known as Time, was still given a lot of credits, and to say that would have been expected last weekend, I think I wouldn't believe someone saying that I would have expected that anyways, but apparently some people did. So then going into this TVZ versus Cham, I mean, if that really was his usual level last weekend, I feel like Cham has like a really good chance actually, because Cham can be very odd to play against. We know that he's taken out some Terran players in Latin American regional that we wouldn't have expected. So yeah, that kind of just all comes down to whether Oliveira does play like last weekend, whether that's his usual or not, or he plays more like Katowice and his immediate tournaments after Katowice.
All right, well, let's find out. It's time to head over to the commentators here for our first World Series of the bracket, as we have Oliveira going up against Cham.
Hello! Yeah, my name is Katz, and I am joined by the one and only, blessing us with his presence this time around, Artosis. How are you, my friend?
Hey, buddy. It's good to be here with you. I'm really excited to do one of these online casts with everybody. The tournament is looking fantastic. Really was enjoying those Korean matches this morning. But ready to watch the one true champion now.
Yeah, I mean, the one true champion, we'll see about that. I feel like Roddy put it well. Like, does he still have it? I'm more on the boat of, did he ever have it? You know what I'm saying? Did he
ever have it? Well, yes, he had it, since he's literally the world champion. So I don't know how you could be on that boat.
Yeah, he is the world champion, but I feel like he's the world champion that has had the most to prove out of any world champion that we have had, because his run was really magical, and he didn't look that great in the first week here. But now we are actually in the game. And I will do this intro for Calaris, actually. Spawning in the top right-hand side, the reigning, defending, undisputed world champion, Oliveira.
Well, you say undisputed, but then at the same time, you're saying you're never on the. Yeah, I think honestly, you're disputing that. Of course, his opponent here in the bottom left, a strong Zerg, but certainly an underdog. It's Cham.
Yeah, for sure. And Chamaco, of course, he is the reigning champion of Latin America as well. It was briefly mentioned in the... But you know, like, that also feels like it shouldn't happen. It's usually Special that takes it. But I agree with Zombie Grab in something, which is that Cham, and I agree with Roddy too, that he is a massive underdog, but he feels like a massive underdog in every tournament that he goes in. Yeah. And then he usually overperforms expectations, but doesn't overperform enough to make a splash and be like, yeah, Cham is, you know, is on the rise and super powerful. It's more like, oh, cool, like a couple of upsets here and there, and no one was expecting that.
No, that's like exactly, that's the perfect way to describe Cham. Like, even honestly, I feel that way in every tournament he's in. Even I remember Katowice this past year, like, he was actually putting out some very good games. Not good enough that we really talked about him at all. Not good enough that it was, you know, a huge storyline, but he was playing well there. So you got to give him some sort of shot. But I mean, you also have to expect Oliveira to be able to take him down. I mean, if he doesn't, I mean, 0-5 last weekend is pretty rough, but Cham is probably the weakest player that we have, you know, this weekend.
Yeah, on paper, no doubt. Again, he's usually the massive underdog, but yeah, there's some potential for upset, I think, here, which is strange to say if we really believe that Oliveira was the best player in the world. He is the champion of the world, but I think very few people would put him as the best currently, and he has a lot to prove, and I really think that this is a start. If you can't beat the perceived weakest player in your group, and those asterisks are just going to be flying all over the place.
Yeah, that would actually be really sad. Honestly, I'm kind of expecting him to qualify. Like, if you don't qualify for Gamers 8, it's going to be pretty rough being the defending champion. It kind of makes it look bad a little bit. And honestly, his bracket is looking reasonable for that, wouldn't you say? Like, if Clem takes down Lambo, Oliveira's TVT is no laughing matter.
That is a very good point. Yeah, I think it's a matchup that I've been most impressed by Oliveira, and that should be exciting coming up as well, Clem versus Lambo. But yeah, I mean, we are now in this game. Cham is known to be a Rochi boy from time to time, as Roddy likes to call them, but not this time around from the look of it.
Yeah, that is certainly when I think about Cham, and I'm like, okay, how is he going to upset a Terran player? And normally roaches just pop into my mind. So we'll see if he tries to get into anything like that after this pretty standard opening. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Of course, we can see over on Oliveira's side, he has gone for that quick third command center. He has the starport coming as well. I'd assume he's going to get Banshees off of that, but let's see.
Yeah, I think Banshees would be a good call just because if you have studied your opponent, I imagine that he has, then you know that Cham has that potential for roaches, and you are going pretty greedy, but he's going for the medevac actually, so this is another way to kind of like just apply a little bit of pressure and get some scouting early on if you're Oliveira, right? So I don't mind it.
Yeah, no, I like the build overall because it's kind of like, okay, we're being greedy, but we're also keeping pressure on. But to be honest, against Cham, I would never, like if I'm Oliveira's coach here, I would never be like, yes, you should both be greedy and drop Marines across the map because there's like some percentage chance that roaches are on the way to your base right now, and then you're kind of screwed.
And he's really working with very little information. So yeah, it's definitely a risk that is not going to get punished this time around. But in a different world, I think, yeah, it was a little disrespectful almost, or maybe more than disrespectful. It was just a little bit of a gamble that you shouldn't be taking as the overdog here, right? It's just, yeah.
The overdog.
The overdog.
Yeah, well, who's the updog then?
The updog. I'm not sure who the updog is. Kiwikaki comes to mind when you say updog. He love to make that one joke about the what's up dog.
Not much, you.
Not much. What's up with you?
But yeah, look at this little Marine drop. Like, he's doing a pretty good job with it. He's clearing some of the overlords. He's getting some good scouting intel as well. Honestly, you can't hope for a better opener than what Oliveira has gotten here. 3 overlord kills, 0 units lost, and the 3rd command center going up without any problem.
Yeah, no, that's massive, right? Because he's not getting pressure applied to him in any way. The clearing the overlords is really nice to set yourself up for later on, or even right now. This medevac kind of just goes into the main, and there's nothing to give Cham a good heads up. So he always needs pockets of links in the main. He might need spores or something of the like. So I agree. This is wonderful for an Oliveira that really didn't invest much and was being greedy behind it. So great start.
What do you think about this missile attack upgrade and the roach speed? So there you go. Cham is going to go for that style that we know so much about from him, going into that kind of heavy roach play.
I mean, I love it. I think it's one of the better chances. It's one of the styles that is kind of like, you know, underperformed over time, and as such, players of the highest caliber usually don't go to it, but it's one of the easiest in terms of execution, right? It's easy to manage your larva when you're going for roaches heavily, and that could bode well for Cham, but this is a really nice drop from Oliveira here.
Yeah, it really is. The Spore's not really in position in time. He's getting some big damage onto those drones as well. There is a little Ling counterattack occurring at the 3rd base of Oliveira, but he's going to pull out of there pretty quickly, and honestly, his drop is doing a much better job against these queens.
Yeah, so difficult for Cham to go up that ramp, right? Get that spread on the queens, and he has to wait for the roaches. The first roach is going to pop up, and he doesn't want to lose his lair, so he's going to go for it. Could transfuse the lair, and is at the moment, but there's just not enough DPS to save it and kill the Marines in time. So yeah, Oliveira is going to get away with murder here.
Dude, this is like one of the most dominating openings that you could ever have. I'm sure that Cham has to be a bit frustrated. The fact that he played this greedy and this aggressively, putting on this much pressure, like everything has gone Oliveira's way. And look at this. Is he going to actually, oh my God, he wasn't even a cancel after killing the lair and everything else? Like, this game is almost done.
It's done mentally, I almost want to say, because Cham didn't need to cancel. He still had a couple of seconds there where he could have made the decision a little bit later, and he would have saved it, I'm pretty sure. But a slight miscalculation there, and it's compounding, like you said, with everything that has happened up until this point. So the supply seems to, you know, say, hey, like, this is a game, but it's really not. It's roaches that are inflating that supply. You are going to fall behind from not having the real state of 2 of your bases, so you're effectively, your income is just so hampered. And Cham has to try to make something happen, but Oliveira already preparing with siege tanks and supply depots even in front to soak up some of that damage and make it difficult for the units to get through.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Like, I don't even feel like there is like a roach timing that can be hit. It doesn't feel like there's a good recovery path here. Like, he's remaking the lair, he's putting those 2 hatcheries down that he lost. You know, we're getting into +1 melee because, well, again, he doesn't have a lair, so you can't start your 2-2. I mean, it's like the worst case scenario.
It really is the worst case scenario. Like, I am trying to think of recovery mechanisms, right? You might want to go for something like Infestor, something that can get you a huge fungal onto a clump of bio and then reset those army counts a little bit. But like you said, there's no lair. So there really it feels like there's nothing for Cham to do in this game here. And Oliveira continues to apply pressure. This is not maybe the best traits. He seems to confidently be going forward, he will eventually evacuate, but even just evenish trades are going to favor him, so at the end of the day, it works.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think he needs to do any of these trades or anything. Like, if he just masses up and moves out at 2-1, like, nothing stops that, right? If you
I don't think so.
If you just move out with all your, you bring all of your units together. You know, sometimes these great Terran players, they over-harass. It's like, dude, you've done so much damage. Keep your entire army alive and then move out. There's no way 1-1 roaches are going to stop you.
Yeah, and that's kind of the nice thing of what Oliveira is doing here is he's not like he's committing 2 medevacs worth that he has had out on the map for a very long time. There's just like 7 Marines remaining there. So what this does for him is nice because he knows where the army of Cham is, which offers him even more breathing room to take his extra bases to get set up for this incoming attack. And now he seems to be ready to move out. And I'm with you, Dan. I don't think there's any world where Cham stops this.
No, certainly not. Even a couple of Liberators are being added in. He started +2 armor, +2 vehicle weapons. There's so much going on that even if this didn't work, Oliveira is very healthily going to the next stage of this game. But here he comes, a very quick, very direct push towards this 4th base. And, like, I can't imagine this army being taken out by what Cham has.
Nah, the Marines would have to move into the banelings on move command and then, you know, clumped up, and then maybe there's a chance. But before this, there wasn't even any AoE to speak of, so the banelings offer a little bit of hope, but not really much at all. It's gonna be a decisive victory here from Oliveira.
Now, that was a pretty one-sided one, unfortunately. You know, Oliveira took just a couple of risks early on. They paid off amazingly, and I mean, you can't get a more one-sided victory than that.
No, absolutely not. But I think it is what you just mentioned, right? It is that Oliveira took a little bit of a risk in going kind of just into 3cc and being very greedy and then pushing out with some Marines. I mean, he would have died probably to most all-ins that are competent on the Zerg side of things. Not that there's many of those. But then also on the side of Cham, he kind of got unlucky with the timing a little bit. Because if he made a little bit, if he himself was a little bit less greedy, had a pocket of roaches already done, he had his roach warren done by the time this Marines arrive, then he holds and the game goes on, and it's kind of just an evenish game instead of just a complete massacre. But also props to Oliveira because he set himself up to do this by killing those overlords earlier, so Cham couldn't be in position. He couldn't react as fast as he would have liked.
Yeah, everything just a little bit too slow, a little bit too off here from Cham, and definitely agree. I actually thought that hatchery was going to live, so maybe Cham is kind of thrown off at this point. I hope that he can come back and play a solid game, but I feel like at this point, Cham has to look at that and say, oh God, that was so bad. Do we switch up the idea for the next game? Maybe play something more aggressive?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I'm not sure that I hated his idea, though. It's just those overlords, right? If he had a little bit of a heads up to make those roaches, I don't know how this game turns out. So I don't know that he needs to fix the formula so much as maybe take a little bit less risks, which is odd to say from the position that he's in as the underdog, right? But yeah, I mean, he definitely has to do something a little bit different, at least account for earlier pressure, perhaps in some way, shape, or form, and then try to take it to Oliveira. Because if he does win this game, we go to NeoHumanity, which is usually a terrible map for Zerg, but Cham has let it through because he likes roaches so much, because he is so aggressive, or can be anyway. So I want to see what he has prepared on that map, but first he has to get through this one.
Well, we are going to Gresvan, probably my favorite map in the pool. And down here at the bottom right, our reigning world champion is Oliveira.
And in the top left-hand side, the Latin American champion, it is Cham.
All right. So, yeah, what do you think from Oliveira? Like, he played a pretty greedy opener there. Do you pull it back some?
Probably, right? Like, you have to expect that your opponent is likely to punish you if you got away with greed in the first game, especially when you have a one-game buffer. I feel like you pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. Like, I would be a little bit nervous that he'd be trying to maybe blindly counter the type of greedy play. And, you know, maybe if you just do like a very standard opener, you know, maybe like Hellion Banshee, something like that, you could catch Cham trying to punish something that's just not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Cham with a little bit of indecision there, or perhaps just not rallying his drone to the gas for whatever reason right away. So I don't know if he's kind of like deciding on his strategy right now, or if he had something planned already, but it's going to be difficult. I mean, this Overlord is just looking for the Reaper path into the main. So Cham is very good at this. Like, his Overlord positioning is pristine. And usually his positioning in general, his positional play in general is really, really good. And that's what sets him apart from other players trying to make the Roach work, for example, right? So that's kind of what I want to see. But Oliveira did counter that beautifully last game with that little pocket of Marines in the first drop. And we'll see if he wants to do something again for that map control, which again I think is one of Cham's strengths.
Yeah, I would really like to see him actually get into one of his type of macro games, because he does play it better than most other players. There's not a lot of players that really like roaches as much as him. You know, maybe Dark. That's the only person that really comes into mind. So he definitely can make it.
Nice.
Ooh,
okay.
That juking and jiving there. Normally I don't talk about the Reaper too much, but that was a nice dance from Cham. I'm surprised he got the hatchery down.
It was nice from Cham, but you also have to draw the mistake out from Oliveira. So Cham making the best out of a situation and kind of gambling a little bit too, because if you go and backstep to drop the hatchery, you're not going to have time to go back for the gas. So maybe that's why Oliveira didn't anticipate that Cham was willing to do something like that, but it's going to work out. A Spore Morph here will save a drone. But yeah, I mean, lucky for Cham that we get a better game out of this, because if that third gets denied, it's not a great start. So.
But here, he's really getting everything off without a hitch. Actually has his Zerglings in a perfect position to deny that Reaper as well. So Oliveira's Reaper really not getting very much done here. I mean, no big surprise there. But with the third getting down like perfectly on time, has to be a bit frustrating for our Terran.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see what transpires here as Cham continues to set up perimeter with his next bunch of Overlords. Notice he doesn't have any Overlords on the other side of the map, does he? I don't think so.
No, I definitely don't see any. Yeah, it's just the very fringes of his base is where all the Overlords are placed. I do kind of wonder about that. Like, maybe he's thinking of that last game and how painful that was to lose, you know, 3 Overlords right off the bat.
Yeah, at the same time, there's not an Overlord in position for him to sacrifice and scout something like a BC opener, or that kind of opener that requires kind of like a completely different response. And he doesn't have the information when his opponent moves out from the natural. But he will see any Hellions poking and prodding. He will see any medevacs that try to go into his main. So yeah, he's giving up a little bit on the other side to just be super safe and develop his own game on his side.
Well, I can't really blame him for that, right? Like, that was one of the main issues that we saw before. Here he's in such a great defensive stance. Certainly nothing bad going to happen to him, but we do have like a pretty greedy build overall from Oliveira, right? He got the very fast third command center, but instead of going for the quicker starport, which is pretty common, he has added on those additional barracks a bit more quickly. So I think that mid game, you know, he's going to be able to push out with quite a few more Marines.
Yeah, here is kind of the drawback of the opening stance that Cham had, which is now he's having to drop kind of blind spores, right? Accounting for potential banshees that could be showing up in a little bit, or potentially battle cruisers a little bit further down the line could be TPing into his mineral line. So he doesn't need those spores at all. So that is just, you know, by virtue of him having no Overlords and no real information coming on the other side of the map.
You know, what do you think about this as the underdog to play without really trying to check for any of the small like nuances that Oliveira would be putting out, right? Like, he hasn't really scouted anything. He's just doing like a textbook. Here is how you defend everything. This blanket defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly something that you can do. It's you know, just kind of like a different way to cut corners, a little bit more gambly. So I guess it depends on, for me, it would depend on how big of an underdog I am, right? If I feel like I have to gamble and take every single edge that I need to take, then I think it's a valid approach, right? And StarCraft is not a game, as say compared with Age of Empires or other RTSs, where there are like super huge counters. Like, there's the Immortal to Roach type interactions, but for the most part, if you have Roaches, they're gonna trade mostly fine against almost anything that Terran can make, right? So from that perspective, you're not gonna fall too far behind, and there is definitely some reward that you could get from that. Not this though.
Yeah. Well, right now, Oliveira coming up and stimming, taking out some of these creep tumors. Going to blow up a few of the roaches as well. Some pretty decent trades. He's making him chew through a lot of those transfusions. You know, Cham doesn't end up losing any queens or anything. He's going to go ahead and instantly relay that creep as well.
Yeah, could we pull up the units lost tab really quick here as Oliveira's 1-1 is about to finish? So yeah, not the worst trades in the world actually for Cham. He did lose a little bit more than he would have liked, and the creep spread is annoying, especially in that kind of middle of the map. It's not going to be easy to replenish, and that's the pressure point that maybe Oliveira is aiming to hit over and over again.
Well, right now, Oliveira trying to split up his units a little bit. Looks like he wants to pressure on a couple of fronts, goes down towards his 4th base. Gonna stem just off creep, get up here, take out quite a few of the creep tumors, and now going after the queens.
Yeah, we'll snatch one of those, and I believe a drone. The Widowmine is beautiful, actually, and that'll allow him to turn around and kill 2 more queens, almost a 3rd one, or a 4th one at that point. So a great job from Oliveira.
Yeah, really, really well executed. Now, 1-1 is finishing up on these roaches. A bunch of lings being made, Baneling, Speed, and Hive on the way for Cham. So really continuing forward and taking his 5th base location. You know, it's an interesting way that he's trying to play this. Like, he's just straight expanding, straight taking up, defending everything as best he can. And, I mean, he's doing a good job about it. I wonder if he's ever going to get into the position where he has a push that can really threaten Oliveira.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's clear that he's executing his game plan and nothing has gone terribly wrong for him so far. So that's a good sign, right? Like, he kind of has what he would have expected to have at this point in time. I am wondering about the Hive. I expected 1 or 2 infestors or something like that just as the bio army scales, especially from someone like Cham. But maybe he just wants to go straight into ultras, judging by the melee upgrade coming up.
Yeah, kind of an older strategy, I think, from like the beginning of Legacy of the Void. We saw a lot of this like kind of Roach Ravager into Ultralisk tech switches. Not a bad idea, especially with this creep spread like halfway through the map. You know, Ultras are just so fantastically went on creep. So if he can get up into those Ultras with this kind of base army that he has, I think that the game just goes very long at that point, because I can't imagine Oliveira pushing through that.
Yeah, or very short if Oliveira doesn't scout the ultras, right? Like, I think that's the ideal case scenario for Cham is you didn't see the ultras, so you didn't add a ton of Marauders, you didn't add a ton of Liberators. As we say that Oliveira is producing 1 Liberator at a time, so he's going to have some sort of buffer against the ultras and 2 Marauders at a time as well. But yeah, I mean, Cham's not even really going for the Ultralisk Cavern as soon as the Hive finishes, so not sure what the plan is here. And this, I don't know if you can break this position. It's a lot of Oliveira here, very well spread. Cham thinks that he can, and he is collapsing onto the middle. Here comes the first Liberator to try and help, and Cham will have to kind of just disengage here, but not the worst trade in the world, I want to say.
No, not the worst, and actually he gave himself a huge opportunity. Almost none of the Banelings connected like he wanted. If any of them had, I think he would have actually smashed the position. So not a bad try from Cham. He does reduce the siege tank count a little bit at least, and now he's getting into the Vipers, the Infestor, and the Ultralisk Cavern.
Yeah, and that is a little bit concerning to me in the sense that he decided not to make that Infestor earlier, for example. I feel like that Infestor earlier gained so much more value because you would have had the energy from it. And now he's kind of like adding so much complexity to his army all at once, but it's not enough of either unit. He's getting 2 Vipers and 1 Infestor. That's almost just a pain to control, right? Because you probably need 2 different hotkeys for 1 unit and another hotkey for 2 units. So yeah, I mean, let's see what he can squeeze out of this while taking into Ultra. I mean, I understand that he is constrained in terms of gas right now, so I think kind of like spreading himself pretty thin here, and it's going to be very demanding on the execution side of things.
Yeah, well, honestly, I like to see it anyways. I know that it definitely ups the difficulty of the engagements, but the world doesn't need another Sue, okay? We need spellcasters in this game. And, you know, his economy is sitting pretty. If he gets just a couple good Blinding Clouds, he might be able to bust through this big tank line.
Yeah, that is kind of like the dream for him, and I guess when he gets to Ultra, it's going to be very nice to harpoon those Liberators out of position so that the Ultras can just plow on through. So let's see, Cham is trying to deny a base at the same time as this is going on, and I think he will be able to at least force the lift off, and now pushing on forward. Gotta be really careful with those Banelings leading the charge in case there's tanks, but there isn't. Is that enough to take down the PF? I think not, but with the repair, no, that's not gonna be it.
Oh, that was so close. Just 2 SCVs. Maybe the difference between killing the planetary or not. That's the most painful thing, man. When you sacrifice that many banelings, but he got some SCVs. The thing is, when I see the number drop to mid-60s, it's like, well, that's still a good enough economy. You're not really that badly hurt.
Yeah, he really needed to get the prize in the planetary fortress. If he resets that position and he already forced the liftoff on the other base, you're effectively putting Oliveira into a 3-base kind of all-in type situation, or a position where at least he has to pull back his army and just make sure that he can defend us. I don't know if this is it for Cham. The tanks are very well spread once again for Oliveira, and actually the DPS is coming from the Marines in the very back of the fight, and this was horrible for Cham. Now Oliveira might have an opportunity to just pounce and try to end the game right now. The first couple of Ultras are out, but Chitinous plating is not yet done for a couple of seconds. The Liberators are gonna siege and destroy this Ultralisks, and this game might come to an abrupt close now.
Yeah, that's too bad. Like, he's attacking in the midst of a transition, right? That's going to be like your weakest moment, is when you're trying to complete your tech tree. And it is unfortunate how that one goes. Oliveira's push is absolutely deadly. GG is called. And that is going to be a pretty quick and one-sided 2-0, although I did like the second game a lot better from Cham.
Yeah, for sure. And also from Oliveira, I mean, some really cool ideas. We saw him applying pressure in that middle of the map and getting rid of the creep very early on. And we saw how that panned out for him, right? Because with that siege line, he was able to siege the base from under it, basically, like that forward base that is on the high ground. Siege tanks don't care about that. So just the fact that he was kind of setting up in the middle and had an option to kill that base and then progress forward, put a lot of pressure on Cham to take these weird engagements later on. So very consistent, very cool game from Oliveira too.
Yeah, I think Oliveira definitely played very well. Honestly, if Cham only did the first attack and then pulled back and just kind of like bought time with some of the counterattacks that we saw, I think he's actually in an okay position, and the game goes on and on and on, and he can really have a chance. But that last attack, he just threw away a bit too much.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, I think we are headed to the desk here. I am more or less guessing, as this winner screen is right in front of us. Desk. That didn't work. Oh.
Well, yes. Thank you, Cats. Fantastic transition, as always. CG and Roddy to talk about this one. Kind of as we expected, Roddy, really. I mean, Cham did put up a decent fight in the second game, but it's Oliveira.
Yeah, no, second game wasn't too bad. There was that one fight in the dead center of Gresvan where I was like, I think it's going to be a disaster. I'm closing my eyes. Yeah. I'm like, okay, actually somewhat decent. Supply still looking somewhat healthy. Then he goes for the big counter. He almost gets the PF, 1 final or 2 final SCVs repairing it. And then that final setup, like, I understand the pressure, right? We've all been there where it's like, I feel like I shouldn't fight here, but I also kind of have to fight here. Otherwise, the tanks and Liberators, they keep on getting closer. But that was not the right moment to go for it, and definitely not the right engagement either. So Oliveira just looked good, and he looked like we kind of want a world champion to look.
Yeah, very, very nicely done here. I mean, ZG, when you, as Roddy's saying, when Terran is allowed to get set up quite the way Oliveira is, with the tank line going back for ages, the bio being so far back that the banelings can't start connecting, I don't know how you're supposed to take that engagement as Cham at that point. It seems a bit futile almost.
Particularly on Gresvan, yes, it is very difficult. But generally, you know, the kind of goal is to get to that Viper technology, which Cham did. But then, yeah, the usage just wasn't particularly great. I think other TVZs have also proven that if they get into what I'm going to call the well, the space around their third and below their fifth, I suppose, actually isn't as devastating as it might feel, because that's where a lot of the combat happens on Gresvan in this matchup. Not to say that it's not stressful and it can't quickly turn sour, but you can actually let them there and then still possibly have a good engagement, especially if you set up a surround, which Cham just didn't do. And in first game, as we're watching on the highlight here, there are just some serious macro problems. Cham lost the game with 1,800 minerals and 1,100 gas in the bank. So that explains a lot, but of course the early game didn't go so well for him. So Cham never really getting to, I think, do the kind of weirdness, honestly, like the way that he chooses to engage. It really, I think, throws off a lot of Terran players. Like this one, how many Zerg players would have chosen this fight? But it didn't ever throw off Oliveira. Oliveira got to play his normal TVZ.
And the highlights here presented by Aramco as we take a look at some of the final moments here, the banelings that you were referring to earlier. And it is rough when you've sacrificed that much. Yeah, you get 20 SCVs, but again, as Dan was mentioning during the cast, Roddy, does Terran really care when they've got the mules raining down behind the 60 SCVs still alive?
I mean, if you keep on doing it, they're absolutely going to care eventually, but it's obviously never nice for a Zerg when you throw away that many units and don't quite get the base. And these final fights, I mean, the previous fight was the one that obviously mattered the most, and right before kindness splitting as well, a couple of other upgrades were somewhat close to finishing up. It wasn't bad by Oliveira, and even though there were some macro issues towards the end of the first game, in his defense, obviously did lose the main base, right, and lost the fourth base. We've seen that before. As a Zerg, it can sometimes be hard to somehow recover from that, because you're like, all the things I normally do that work perfectly fine suddenly don't add up anymore because my game has been disrupted.
And there you go. Oliveira gets himself to a qualification match once again. We saw him in this same place last weekend where unfortunately he fell 0-3 to Hero Marine. Let's see if he can persevere here through this upper bracket once again. Still has another opportunity down in that lower bracket, as does Cham, who has now fallen down to that lower bracket. And we're just awaiting his opponent as to who it may be. We'll find out a little later. It's either Clem or Lambo, I believe, from that one, which is obviously our next match here, ZG. So it's going to be a good one. We'll see how that goes. We shouldn't really talk about it too much, though. So any final thoughts on Oliveira versus Cham here, ZG?
Oh, no, standard TVZ. Oliveira is going to have some trouble, I think, in his next qualifying match, because I know we're going to talk about it, but I do think that Oliveira gets an unfavorable qualifying match, because I assume it'll be up against Clem, but then Cham probably gets a favorable one, because it's a ZVZ against Lambo, and that can get really weird.
Ooh, okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys. So it's time for a break. When we return, we have that extra TVZ on the way. It's going to be Clem going up against Lambo. Stay tuned for more Gamers Without Borders.